Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer here with Mike Gallagher to walk you through this 10-game Tuesday slate. Big slate for a Tuesday. Mike, are you ready for it?
Ready? Yeah, got a hike in today. Did all my press fish for today and tomorrow, so we're in good shape. Feeling good today. Yeah, lots to talk about. A lot of stuff that's not on the injury report that I think is noteworthy. So excited to talk through all that too.
Yeah, we've got a little bit of a condensed schedule after the lighter weekend for a lot of teams. So there's a bunch of teams that we haven't seen play in a few days, and then there's a bunch of teams that are on either the front end or the back end of the back-to-back. So like on the back end tonight, Houston, the Clippers, the Spurs, Charlotte, Indiana, all have played last night. On the front end of the back-to-back tonight, the Lakers, Atlanta, Phoenix, Denver, Orlando, Washington, Sacramento, Golden State. So you get this condensed schedule. It can lead to some more variance with respect to blowout minutes and stuff with teams more rested than others. Like, for example, Atlanta hasn't played in 3 days. They're playing an Indiana team on the second night of back tonight. So important to understand the context of where we are in the schedule. Let's get into some of those nuances as well. Let's start with the Suns on this Tuesday injury report. We last saw them on Christmas Day. It was an overtime game to the Nuggets where Devin Booker was ruled out pretty quickly. Landry Shamet has been ruled out as well, along with Cam Payne. So they're pretty thin in the backcourt going up against Memphis, which is a very tough spot to extract fantasy value. What are your thoughts on how the Suns look without Cam Payne, without Landry Shamet, and without Devin Booker today?
Yeah, that is a lot of guard depth missing. And I think one thing that might be on the table is starting bigger or even just a little bit bigger in someone like Josh Okogie or something like that, just to give him a little bit more positional size. Okogie's guarded fours plenty of times, so I think that makes some sense if they didn't want to do the traditional. Just to be clear, the favorite situation is probably still starting Damian Lee. They've been comfortable playing him huge minutes. They want the shooting. Monty Williams says he likes that fit with Chris Paul, but I wouldn't be surprised if they went with like an Ish Wainwright or even a Dario or Josh Okogie or somebody, just because that's where your depth is, and you have like no depth at the guard spot besides Dwayne Washington, Damian Lee, and Chris Paul. Really, I mean they use Bridges as a two sometimes, but I think it's just a better way to allocate your resources in this spot.
Not just the depth, the matchup too, right? The matchup is against a Grizzlies team that plays very big with Jaren Jackson Jr. and Steven Adams in the starting lineup. It would not surprise me at all if we saw something like Dario Saric starting tonight, simply because of what you alluded to in terms of the depth and the backcourt resources, and also how to match up better with the Grizzlies from a size perspective. Now, Torrey Craig can handle that matchup with Jaren Jackson Jr. It's not a huge issue, but it's something to note that they could definitely go that route as well. And I would expect, as long as this game stays competitive, the rotation to be very tight, because we've seen Phoenix let their guys go, their main guys, and they don't have a lot of main guys left. So what are your thoughts on the range of minutes for starters tonight? And even the bench guys, is there anyone on the bench that would potentially start out there that you could see get really expanded minutes given the lack of depth overall?
Yeah, not really. Unless they bring Damian Lee off the bench, he'd be a guy that they're very comfortable playing him big minutes if they did kind of mix it up. They did start smaller against them last week. They had this matchup and got completely worked. So maybe it's another point to change it, because it was just so bad. They gave up 39 points in the first quarter when they last played and got ran out the gym at their own building. But yeah, I would expect. Just a side note, man, Chris Paul's looked terrible the last handful of games. Ayton should play a bunch. We know Bridges definitely has a 40 in him minutes wise. Torrey Craig, they play him a bunch too. So yeah, just could be a really condensed rotation. Too bad the matchup's really bad. The Grizzlies defense prior to getting worked against the Warriors was rolling since Jaren Jackson returned from injury. They were first in defense, first in half court defense, first in at rim defense, first in mid range defense. They were just really good. So Suns are in a tough spot.
Yeah, and for more about Chris Paul and the Suns' struggles, you can check out the Established Run NBA podcast, where Mike and I broke down our reactions to the 5 games on Christmas Day. That has been posted in live on the Established Run NBA pod feed for all of you to consume. Okay, big questionable tags on the slate. There's a couple. One is early, one is late. Let's start with the early one. Jalen Brunson is questionable. He left the game against Philadelphia early, but I mean, towards the end of the fourth quarter, you could have argued they were being conservative. He ends up playing 35 minutes on the whole in that game. He was in a walking boot before. I don't know. Is it the same ankle? I assumed it was the same ankle, but
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay. What are your thoughts on his availability tonight? We've seen the Knicks play really, really tight. Even with him, it could get even tighter if he's not available.
Yeah, he's listed with a hip. Tom Thibodeau had no update, so he's getting, quote, looked at right now. So going to be flying blind here. Late start, 6:30, so we'll be getting the pressers around lock time. So we're probably not going to have anything. I would expect it to be a game time decision. Revenge game, return to Dallas game, that could play into this as well. So we'll see. I don't have a great read on the situation. It didn't look too bad, and Tibbs didn't sound like concerned. He just didn't have much of an update. Obviously, if he's out, I think they would certainly go back to Emmanuel Quickley. We saw Quickley pick up pretty decent minutes when they were missing Quentin Grimes. They're certainly comfortable playing Quickley in the point guard role, possibly up Miles McBride's minutes a little bit more. I just think if they're willing to play Quickley there in a matchup that was against, I believe it was the Raptors and Fred VanVleet, I think they'd be certainly comfortable adding, you want a little bit more size from McBride to IQ against the Mavericks. Would expect RJ Barrett to pick up that matchup though. But IQ would be looking at a pretty high minute ceiling. We've seen Tibbs just really let guys go. RJ Barrett, namely, is playing low 40s when they really need him to go there.
Yeah. We did see in that game that Quickley started for Grimes, the rates were really weak. It wasn't the same Quickley we've seen off the bench. I do think it's a little bit different if he's starting in place of Brunson. Brunson's obviously a guy that's going to have the ball in his hands a ton. Certainly it's not the same when you're sharing the floor with Jericho Sims and Isaiah Hartenstein compared to Julius Randle and RJ Barrett in terms of spreading out usage. But the really heavy hit that his rates took when he was playing alongside Randle, Brunson, and Barrett, I don't think is quite the same as being in the Brunson role. I think the ball will be in his hands a little bit more than it was last time if we do get there. I would also expect Derrick Rose to re-enter the rotation if Jalen Brunson is unable to go as the backup point guard in that spot. And as you alluded to, just probably really, really big minutes from RJ, from Quentin Grimes, from Julius Randle, as much as they can handle. That's the way Tibbs is going to go these days. So definitely an interesting one to pay attention to. And as you alluded to, it's early of the two injuries that we're talking about, the two big Q tags, but it's late relative to where the slate is. So whether we get this information in advance or not will dictate a lot of the slate. Okay, the later game injury that I was referring to, that's the big questionable tag on the slate, is Domantas Sabonis. And this one is really interesting because he's got I believe it's a broken thumb. Is that the issue that he's got? And it's on his non-shooting hand. It's on his right hand. They came out and basically the concern was that he was going to be out for multiple weeks, like initially on the injury reporting. And then they came out and said like, it's broken. He can play through it, listing him questionable. Then there was some reporting done about the infamous starters jerseys. And I'll let you take it. I'll let you take it from there, Mike.
Yeah, so Kevin Herter doing my job here. A reporter asked him about the situation with Sabonis, and he said that Alex Len was working in their first unit. So yeah, shout out to Kevin Herter, Red Velvet doing some work for us. And then fast forward to Mike Brown's presser, he was upset that Kevin Herter, quote, like gave out his secret, and he's gonna have to talk to him after the presser to tell him not to do that. So, Kevin Herter giving us a big hint. And this isn't surprising. We've talked a lot about, teams have an affinity to going to Alex Len, whether he's on whatever team, to use him against Jokic. So it certainly made sense. I was like wondering if this is going to happen. And maybe it's a false flag operation here that they're doing this. But and it sounded like before he talked about giving away the secret, it sounded like they were expecting him to miss. Now they could just be being cautious. Why would you run him out there in practice? It sounds like he's got a really legit chance to make, to miss this game. So we know Len is going to be real dicey, though. He may be the sacrificial lamb, just eat up some minutes till they can get into the rotations. And they have zero faith in anyone. Like we've seen Rashawn Holmes get minutes recently. We've seen Chimezie Metu lose minutes to Mias Keita. I mean, it is like people were asking me, I forgot to text them, message them back, but like, who do you like add for fantasy in this situation? And look, there's no good one, which is amazing. They talked about setting more on-ball screens. The whole presser was talking about how they could play without Sabonis, or most of it, anyways. So K-Talk could screen. It certainly wasn't a Trey Lyles, Metu kind of a situation. Those guys are more pick and pops. They want to have more like screen roll, dive stuff. So I think Alex Len could play maybe low 20s if things are clicking for him. I think Keita is going to be in the rotation either way. How much you can get is up for debate. But this is late game. We're probably flying blind here. He'll probably get the warm up, see how he feels situation, pain tolerance factor as well. So he could play and scrap it, kind of like Devin Booker with his groin aggravation. It's a really, really dicey and murky situation.
So a couple notes here. First and foremost, it's a back-to-back for Sacramento. They're playing Denver both games. I bring that up just because it could have been a scenario where they're sort of prepping from a practice perspective on like, let's get this ready in case Sabonis is unable to go, because it is a back-to-back set and we just need the reps essentially with it. Two other things I'll note. Alex Len, 2 years ago, 42 starts, averaged 16.7 minutes per game. Last year, 10 starts, averaged 19.7 minutes per game. He has not started a game this year to this point. But the point being, there is a chance that he starts and still doesn't play meaningful enough minutes to make an impact in fantasy. Now, we've also seen some very big starting performances from Alex Len. He's a very volatile player because he is a big dude who has he's kind of like a poor man's Zubats, in that he has the ability to win on the offensive glass, but he is a statue defensively. And so if he's not winning on the offensive glass, he's providing you almost nothing out there, and teams will get away from him very quickly. So the matchup with Jokic, very tough to win on the offensive glass. Jokic is one of the best defensive rebounders in the entire league. His size obviously would be necessary, but there's no good answers. There's no good answers for when the test is Nikola Jokic. So I don't know whether we're going to get Sabonis or not here, but I know that if Len is the value and we get it in advance, I'd be leery of chalky Alex Len, because the things he does best are limited most by Jokic, and he doesn't have a history of playing a ton of minutes in these starts.
And it helps that there's two late game hammers there. So you've got kind of ways to wiggle out of it if you are going into it. We'll definitely talk more about that later. And he was asked about, he got peppered with Alex Len questions just because the secret was given out. And he's like not worried about him, et cetera, because he hasn't been in the rotation.
Yeah. And how far Richaun Holmes has fallen, which is unfortunate because Holmes is actually a guy who has things that could give Jokic problems, in the sense that he's a really good pick and roll guy with a floater, because Jokic plays a lot of drop coverage that takes away kind of the lob at the rim, but the floater is available. And it's one of those things where, like, gosh, if Richaun Holmes was the Richaun Holmes of old, it would seem like this would be the spot to deploy him, but he has been awful all year.
I think he's been a Nuggets killer. There's a couple teams he's just killed. I think Nuggets are one of them. I'm going to look
Richaun.
Go ahead. Yeah,
wouldn't surprise me. Nutridad asks, expanded role for Fox, ? So if Sabonis is out, I've already done some of the prep for if Sabonis is out, what the rates look like. I haven't looked at what the projections look like on the whole. But what I noticed while going through the rates was that there was no discernible big jump in usage from anybody in the starting lineup without Sabonis on the floor. Their usage all stayed pretty similar. The difference was the assist rate for Fox jumped up quite a bit. And it makes sense. Sabonis has a big assist rate in his own right. They run a lot of offense through him. This would make it so that more of the offense, more of the time with the ball is in De'Aaron Fox's hands, and he's the one sort of distributing a little bit more. So it is an expanded role for Fox if Sabonis is unable to go, but maybe not in the way that most people would initially assume, which is just like soaking up a ton of extra usage. That generally has been spread around. What are your Richaun Holmes notes?
He scored 20 points in each of the last two games against them, so that was right.
That was
a while ago. But
the floater game is the way to exploit Jokic defensively. It's either with higher ball screens, which we saw, the Phoenix do over and over and over again, or have a big that can hit those floaters, because he's not going to give up the stuff at the rim as much. So will be interesting.
Yeah, 18 plus in 3 of his last 4. Yeah, he's had only one bad game against them, and 24 and 13. So 4 of his last 5 games against Denver have been really good. So
it's
he
going to
has
be
been a no-go
impossible.
killer.
It's going to be impossible to play that outside of like the 2-game slate showdown if Sabonis is ruled out. But it's. I think he's fallen
What if it's
so
a false
far.
flag operation? What if it's a false flag operation? They do.
It would be an incredible false flag operation if they're doing that. He's fallen so far in the rotation that I really don't think it's the case. But and obviously Mike Brown knows way more about basketball than I will ever know. So he has a much better pulse for handling this. But that was kind of one of my main thoughts, was that Holmes stylistically fits attacking. Okay. Other big questionables on the slate. Denny Avdia is questionable for Washington. We've seen him miss, and we've seen one game Corey Kispert really benefit a lot. The next game it wasn't Corey Kispert. So what are the thoughts on what the Wizards look like without Denny Avdia?
So partial practice for him. Sounds like he's got a good chance to play. As you mentioned, they went big, which makes sense against, at the time it was Sabonis, who just torched them. My cover boy goes 20-point triple-double, a huge game from him. Shout out to me. But I think he's back. They've been off since Friday. He was kind of getting a little bit closer. So I think he'll be back. Maybe a little bit of a minutes limit. Just a couple other notes. Kristaps Porzingis has a thumb injury that is, quote, out of place, according to him. Interesting phrasing there. And then also DeLon Wright said his conditioning is, quote, not good. This was at practice yesterday. So he had the weekend. He's not even close to ramped up. So would probably expect him to pick up the non-Monty Morris point guards and probably nothing else. Even if Denny is out, be curious to see what happens to Will Barton now that they have DeLon back. Based on Wes Unsalt's comments, it sounds like they're just going to we saw Jordan Goodwin go away. He'll be in the quote unquote stay ready group that coaches always throw around when players get kicked out of the rotation. But keep an eye on Porzingis' thumb. Want to see if it's taped up, something along those lines. And then obviously, Gafford will probably be getting booted regardless. If they may overlap him a little bit. They were overlapping them, against the Sixers. I think it makes sense to add, extra size. Don't put Porzingis in that matchup. So I think they might even go that way if Denny can't go.
Yeah. I have nothing to add there. I was just trying to think if I have anything to add. DeAndre Hunter questionable for Atlanta. Clint Capella has already been ruled out. Deeper on the depth charts, Fit Krejci is also questionable, but unlikely to play in the rotation anyway. Any news or notes on DeAndre Hunter here?
Yeah, rolled his ankle on Friday. Looks like he had enough time to heal up. Nate McMillan was asked about the rotation and booting Jalen Johnson from the rotation, and he says he's going to beef up his rotation with John Collins and Hunter. So it sounds like they're expecting Hunter to play. If he doesn't go, I would expect them to start Bogdan Bogdanovic and run those guys up. They've been rested, as you mentioned. They are on a back-to-back. I think they're going to want this game against the Pacers. But, I think it's pretty straightforward. And obviously no Capella. Okongwu is the last time we saw he's been playing a lot better. He had
which version of Okongwu do we get? Do we get starter version, like days in advance known starter version of Okongwu, or do we get emergency starter version of Okongwu? Because he was so bad the first few starts that Capella missed, and then he got a start that was surprising when they had started Collins the day before, and he was great, and then he played very well off the bench against Detroit. So that's the big question for me, is what version of Onyeka Okongwu are we getting tonight?
Yeah, he has been PJ Washington levels of inconsistent lately.
Onto the Celtics, where Time Lord is listed as questionable, as is Peyton Pritchard. Not sure Pritchard is in the rotation when everybody's healthy. Time Lord is an interesting one, though. We overestimated his minutes on Christmas Day. It was one of the weaker spots in our projections. And I was surprised to see Blake Griffin get, a few spare minutes that weren't Time Lords. I thought those 6 would basically be Time Lords. So that made me question things a little bit in terms of where he is health-wise. What is he listed with today on the injury report?
Illness. So this means he probably was under the weather on the Christmas Day game, and they just wanted to get him out there for the matchup.
He was probable that game with illness. So so going from probable to questionable, though, I guess is not great.
Yeah, I think they just kind of forced him in there because they really wanted that game, so they probably don't need it quite as bad. here against the Rockets, you would think. So maybe this is just a spot to kind of manage him. They don't play tomorrow, though. Yeah, he said he liked Blake Griffin in the second unit, wanted to kind of try it out. As you mentioned, it was kind of a new wrinkle from what we see when this team is relatively healthy. The main Blake wrinkle has been starting him when Al Horford's resting.
Right.
But yeah, so I think that's pretty straightforward. I'm expecting Time Lord to play, but they might just, like, hey, you're sick. We don't want to ramp up your minutes too much anyways. Take a game off. So we'll see. It's the second game of the day, or third, I should say. Second slot of the day. So we should have a pretty good idea there. But he won't play too many minutes anyways. He hasn't really been ramped up too much yet.
All right, on to the probable tags and the returns. Dennis Schroeder got a probable tag with a foot issue. Any notes there on the Lakers side of things?
No, not really on injury stuff. I did want to just highlight some of the rotation notes that we saw on Christmas. A decent amount of LeBron at the 5, and we even saw Russell Westbrook at the 5 spot against Luka and the Mavs. I don't think Luka was out there for some of that, but very, very odd. They're in full-on experiment mode with these rotation minutes. We saw Thomas Bryant's minutes crater in this spot. Tough scene. We had Austin Reeves guarding Luka a lot, which we kind of expected. But yeah, this team is, Clippers South in relation to the standings, not in like actual location. Because we don't have a great feel. We're not gonna have a great feel for this rotation. I think they're really going to be trying to figure some things out. It's going to be tough. He talked about possibly playing Wenyen Gabriel more with LeBron. That. Interesting to say that when they're playing against the Magic today, right? So maybe they shake some things up there, pull Lonnie Walker out, move LeBron around or something along those lines. I don't think they want to do that. I think they like LeBron at the center spot. But yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on. First game of the day. Don't think there's any starting lineup changes, but just know if you're playing Lakers that aren't LeBron James, you could be running into
super volatile.
A bit of a exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Draymond Green listed probable with a foot issue. Still no JaMychal Green or Andrew Wiggins for the Warriors. They're coming off their big win against Memphis. Another kind of softer spot in the schedule for Golden State, getting Charlotte on the second night of a back-to-back at home. Any reason for concern with Draymond from a probable tag perspective?
No, just awesome game from him on Christmas, man. Just, ball handling was superb. Rebounded the ball really well on the defensive end. As Kerr said, it was, your classic Draymond Green, scores 3 points and just takes over in basically every other category besides scoring, and not even stat sheet stuff.
All right. Other probable tags to note: Kentavious Caldwell-Pope for Denver got the probable tag. They're in that game with Sacramento, later game tonight. Any issues there?
Nope, good to go. Curious to see how Bones Highland bounced back. He had a pretty rough Christmas. Malone kind of hinted that he could cut his minutes down a little bit. We're seeing Christian Brown take up some minutes. So I think Bones is a little bit on thinner ice. Very noteworthy that Jamal Murray's been playing a ton. So that knee thing that cost him a game against Memphis, huge game for them. Looks to be back. Aaron Gordon, one of the dunks of the season. MPJ gave him really good minutes. He was getting targeted on defense. I thought he kind of held his own too. Just quick notes on the Nuggets. But Jokic, man, MVP buzz has got to be starting with you. You dropped 41, 15, and 15 on Christmas. They're going to be picking up.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know if the committee, the voters, will be willing to give Jokic 3 in a row. I do know that all of the people in my mentions are just in shambles after 2 years of Jokic winning MVP, and now the Nuggets being the number 1 seed, and people saying, "Oh, like, well, how can you give it to a 6th seed or whatever because he's not good enough?" And I was just like, "Yeah, they're the 6th seed with Facu Campazzo and Austin Rivers as their starting backcourt. Do you have any idea if they had their main guys, how clearly they'd be at the top of the standings?" And it's like, no, Embiid and the Sixers should be there, and here we are. The Sixers are like the 5-6 seed with all their guys. I guess without Tyrese, without Maxey, sorry.
All right, baby.
While Denver is the number 1 seed with their guys healthy. It's just like very clear. Jokic impacts winning in a really significant way. Okay, let's move on to Dallas. Kemba Walker and Frank Ntilikina. They're both ruled out from the Christmas Day game. Both listed probable today. There was a quote from Kid about Kemba and his knee acting up after the 42 minutes. It's like, dude, are you new here? Like, what did you think was going to happen? So what are your notes on Kemba and Ntilikina tonight?
Just bye McKinley Wright 4. He was pretty decent. Gave him some pretty good minutes for them, but I would expect those guys to go away. And yeah, I think that Christian Wood's kind of here to stay in the starting lineup. It's been a pretty good move for them. We talked about this a little bit on the pod that they're pretty comfortable playing him big minutes. There could be some inconsistencies because it's Christian Wood, but against the Knicks, you definitely want some interior scoring presence. I think it's a pretty good spot to play him a lot of minutes. Whether he can succeed in those minutes is TBD, but I think the minutes will be there.
Yeah, and I think something that helps them as well with the rotation is just having Kemba back, having somebody who can anchor that second unit from a usage perspective, alongside Dinwiddie or alongside Luka, depending on how they choose to play them. But that they had to really extend the main guy's minutes on Christmas Day simply because they didn't have anybody that could generate a shot in that second unit for anybody else. So Kemba's presence back should cut down the ceiling on Dinwiddie's minutes just a little bit. Same with Tim Hardaway Jr. would be my guess. Kemba's not going to play much more than like 16 to 18, but those minutes are at least available in a way that has a competent offensive player out there that can create, and that's going to impact the ceiling of some of these other guys just a touch. I think it helps Christian Wood's case to stay in the starting lineup, though, when you've got that second unit usage available. Okay, doubtful and outs. Eric Gordon was ruled out. Kenyon Martin Jr. has usually gotten the start in these spots. Is that the expectation tonight?
Yeah, 100%. We've seen pretty clearly that KJ Martin's a guy that's going to pick up a lot of runs. So, yeah, I think that's pretty straightforward. Not too much else to add. Coming off a huge game, man. KPJ just cooking this Bulls backcourt. But, really big win for them. They talked about how, they're kind of getting upset and just came out with a little extra force after being kind of a punching bag for a lot of teams. So, really impressive win against the Bulls, who the vibes are bad again. Sorry, Winky.
The punching bag of the East. On to the Clippers. Second night of back-to-back for the Clippers. Really interesting game last night where they're down 14 with 3 minutes left. Ty Lue, basically, they give up an and one to Isaiah Stewart. Ty Lue is like, we're calling off the dogs, taking out Paul George, taking out all the starters, puts in a bench unit. Moses Brown and Amir Coffey and Terrence Mann to the rescue. They get the game back within 2. He subs back in Paul George for the final possession. They get the game into overtime. Then the main guys with Paul George kind of come back out there. I will note there was a note on the broadcast that Norm Powell, before they were going to overtime, the trainer, the performance monitor or whatever, had come over to the bench to have a conversation with Ty Lue. And the broadcast noted it was about Norm Powell's minutes. And so they said, we're not going to see Norm Powell in overtime because he's hit whatever the minutes quote is. And it was at 22 and a half or something like that. So would expect him to be still managed. No John Wall tonight. Kawhi is back and no other silly business from the Clippers so far. I say so far because it is the Clippers. What are your thoughts on how the rotation shakes out tonight?
Yeah, pretty straightforward. They'll be starting Reggie Jackson, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Marcus Morris, and Ivica Zubats with a bench unit of Batum, Powell with the minutes cap. Terrence Mann would be the backup 1 behind Reggie, and then Luke Kennard, and that's probably it. You got a pretty good 9-man right there. And yeah, Moses Brown goes plus 12 in 3 minutes down the stretch. What a bad loss for the Pistons. After they fought back, man, they had like such a great run, like early fourth quarter, and that's what Casey talked about. It's like, oh man, we got to learn how to win here. But that was a really big time win for the Clippers and just a peak Ty Lue fashion, right? Like, yeah, you're losing it with this, and you throw out two dudes who weren't even playing, and they win the game for you.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
All right, on to Precious Achiuwa. You got a doubtful tag? Is this an upgrade for Precious Achiuwa? Are we going to see him anytime soon? What's the Precious update for Toronto?
Yeah, doubtful. So probably one more game. It's been we've been having a tough time reading these Raptors injury reports because OG Anunoby beat his timetable by like 2-3 games. We've seen Gary Trent miss his timetable by like 2-3 games. So definitely expecting him to miss. Really strong game from them, man. We saw them on Friday shoot the lights out. And Nurse was like, we've been playing well. We just keep losing close games. So they've got some confidence. Curious to see if Malachi Flynn takes over the starting lineup, I think they're going to probably keep it. I mean, they're pretty comfortable with this Juancho Hernan-Gomez starting lineup role. So I think they're going to run it back based on what Nurse was saying following the big win in Cleveland.
All right. Other notes, back-to-back teams, Spurs and Hornets, no filing yet.
Spurs did file. We were on.
Spurs did file. Okay. Any meaningful information from the Spurs filing?
Yes. Keldon, I'm just going to pull up Underdog. I don't know where it came from. But Keldon was questionable. Not surprised. Back-to-back factor there. Don McDermott, questionable knee. Not surprising there. They did send down Blake Wesley. I saw another beat writer post on my phone that Blake Wesley's not going to play today. So that's interesting because we saw it's not really interesting in the ways you think. I'm just a sicko. But because we saw Josh Richardson get the boot yesterday, and that was something as Malachi Branham really picked up a lot of usage late in this game. Got 26 minutes, scores 20. He was probably at his best game of his career. As they, it kind of cut into Trey Jones like a little bit, and Trey made some big plays at the end of the game. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, they were the last 4 minutes of this game until the last 2 possessions. Trey Jones took the ball back in his hands and ran the offense, and he got 2 buckets to kind of seal the game for them. But they were running everything through Branham. I mean, everything. It was just high ball screens for Branham and letting him go. And the kid was not shy. I mean, he was not passing in these situations. He was taking runners. He was making runners. I had like a little bit of a sweat, I thought, brewing with Keldon Johnson. And Keldon, I don't think he touched the ball on offense in the entire fourth quarter. It was just Malachi Branham and Devin Vassell every time down. And so if Branham is going to eat more into the rotation, just based on what I've seen from him in a short period of time, he is going to pose a threat to eating into rates from Trey Jones, from Devin Vassell, from Keldon Johnson, more so than someone like Josh Richardson. And Richardson's had like fine rates, but it's mostly been when he's led the second unit kind of by himself. The idea that, these guys all might play together, Branham could potentially eat into some of the usage here.
Mm-hmm. And we got an Aaron Gordon added for a shoulder injury. Just added now, so curious to see if that's the dunk. I wonder if he hurt himself in the dunk.
Yeah,
that would be pretty straightforward. They'd be almost certainly starting Bruce Brown. If you can't go. Yeah,
would help Michael Porter Jr. quite a bit in that scenario. Just from a positional standpoint in the offense, rebounding, hierarchy of the offense, and different things like that. I think it would help MPJ a little bit more than people might think at first.
Yeah, he's listed with a right shoulder strain. So it's not. That's whenever I see a strain or a sprain, that's a big red flag. And that's his dunking shoulder, man. Like he legit might have pulled a muscle on that dunk, man. He threw that thing down so hard. Yeah.
Okay. Wendell Carter Jr. still on a minutes limit for the Magic. Do you expect him to continue to start off the bench, or to come off the bench?
Yeah. Well, he's starting the game off the bench, so he didn't necessarily miss there. But I don't know. Fan was on it. Fan was like for sure. He was almost for sure saying so. Big props to him. But I think they start him. I really do. Worth noting, they had a kind of a full practice. I think either Monday or Sunday, one of those days, and he mentioned. Wendell Carter was kind of ramping up. So we saw, a pretty hard cap, probably was around 20. So maybe it's like a 23, 24 cap. I mean, it's Wendell Carter Jr. As great as Mo Wagner's been, I think that they might start him, but they might not, Mo's been awesome.
You feel confident that it's Mo and not Bull?
No, I don't feel. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I feel pretty confident it'd be him. They're just used that in that way. Defensively,
I don't know, the brother vibes, man. The brother vibes in the starting lineup. They've been winning since. So I don't know. I think they're gonna. I think they're gonna keep Wendell off the bench until they lose. I just think they've played so well, and I think they're gonna be very conscientious of not disrupting that until there's a reason to. Is kind of my feeling on it. From a DFS perspective, it shouldn't matter too much. I mean, this game was a little bit of a blowout, so the minutes got a little bit skewed, but I think this is the way it's going to be, where you might get somebody who touches upper 20s, but I don't think you're getting 30s from any of these big guys when they're all healthy, with the exception of Paolo, right? But like Mo, Bull, Wendell Carter Jr., when they have Mo, Bull, Wendell Carter Jr., and Bamba, I don't think anybody's touching 30s. I think it's until Wendell like really asserts himself. But they like what they're getting from all these guys. They got too many guys. Who would have thought it? Okay. You have a note.
I think it's interesting that because he's guarded like Giannis. Mo Wagner's guarded like Giannis.
Yep.
He's guarded like some really big wings, and I think it makes sense to have him off the bench. That way, when LeBron gets staggered and plays small ball center, that way you can kind of have him there. It makes some sense to me. But I don't have a great read on it. First game of the day, so we'll know.
You have a note. PJ Tucker's dead hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has a pinched. Yes, he has a pinched nerve in his hand. They're calling it dead hand right now. Which that explains why he's not shooting. No, it does not explain that.
Which hand is it on? Do you know?
I think it's a shooting hand. Yeah,
he doesn't have a shooting hand. Is it right or
left?
left?
Nice, well played. Yeah. So I mean, we saw him lose minutes, man. They've got options. We saw George Yang pick up some big minutes down the stretch. So if this dead hand thing is a thing, then maybe we see a bit more George Niang. We'll certainly see a ton of minutes out of Harden. Tobias is playing a bunch. Melton minutes kind of came down with some fouls in the last game. But keep an eye on the dead hand.
The big thing that I'm going to note with PJ Tucker that I think they are figuring out is that they basically have a platoon player on their hands. And I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, we already know that PJ Tucker is just a defensive guy. That's not what I mean. What I mean is he's literally only going to play meaningful minutes against other elite wing bigger scorers. Those are the only guys he's going to play a lot against, because I think they're basically figuring out, like, offensively, if you don't have a threat to him, then let's play Niang, who's actually going to shoot out there and provide us a little bit of offense. And if it's smaller teams, let's play DeAnthony Melton and play him a lot more. And obviously with Tyrese Maxey coming back, that's important to note, because Shake Milton's played really well. DeAnthony Melton's played incredible. Tucker has not. And so I just think as Maxey's not back tonight, but they're hoping for Friday. But as Maxey gets back, I think Tucker's role, you're going to see some games where I think he plays like 18 minutes. Like I think the minutes are going to be really, really lower, which he's a low usage guy. If you're replacing his minutes with higher usage guys, it could put more pressure on one of the three of Embiid, Harden, and Tobias. Tobias would be the most likely candidate to feel the pressure there of rate compression.
But they may put Tybalt in there, so that's kind of an even swap. He's been low usage as well.
They could, but I don't.
It'd be matchup based though.
I'm saying when everybody's healthy, not if Tucker gets hurt. I'm saying if Tucker's healthy, I think the matchup based stuff is still going to be, once they get Tyrese back, I think it's going to be closing with Melton. I think their closing lineup is going to be Maxey, Melton, Harden, Embiid, and Tobias, with the exception of when they're going up against like KD, Giannis, these guys that they like Tucker defending. So I think Tucker's minutes are going to come down. I think, there's going to be a lot more rate compression when Tyrese gets back as a whole, but I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, it makes sense. Melton's been awesome.
Grizzlies. You noted Grizzlies almost healthy. Danny Green said he's targeting All-Star break. Is that something you wanted to note here on the show?
Well, they just sent their G League guys down. They're going to bring them back up. But David Roddy out of the rotation. I just wanted to note, interesting quote from Jenkins on John Conchar, having to, quote, recalibrate his game. He's been playing, kind of crappy since Bane came back. So David Roddy, is a guy who kind of got booted. Curious to see if anything happens there. This is, this is for the sickos. But just something I wanted to note really quick.
And then you have same story for the Thunder. So G League guys are available or unavailable?
Yeah, they're out. Yeah, so just no JRE. We saw Darius Bazley return, lose big minutes, got, quote, lost to the shuffle according to Mark Dagnall. We're almost back to, we don't have JRE back yet, so we're not full on what the hell, throw our hands up and just guess what the numbers are for the minutes, but we're getting back there. So eventually
we'll be back soon at guessing what the hell's going on with the Oklahoma City Thunder. All right. Any other news that came in during the show? Because we obviously cleared that 2:30 mark. Where
just the Gordon
comes in. Okay.
Just Gordon from what I saw.
Gordon and Keldon.
And then as John noted in the chat, Alex Len working with the first unit, Boner not at.
Feel like I lost you. Not sure if they lost me or I lost you. Chat, help me out if you can still hear me. Oh, there we are.
We're back. We lost my screen though.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Well, I think that will do it for this edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. As always, please support the people who are supporting us. The show is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. They have daily NBA snake drafts for money, running in addition to many formats of NFL contests still running for huge cash prizes. If you're playing NBA Pick'em, in-season subscribers can use our tools to compare ETR projections to their fantasy Pick'em games. If you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, use promo code ETR for a matching deposit bonus up to $100. It's promo code ETR at underdogfantasy.com. All right. As always, only a few more days left on the holiday sale. So if you are looking to try us out, now is the best time to do so. We have a 33% discount off weekly and monthly passes. They will recur at those prices. So you can, if you're an existing subscriber, you can also take advantage. You can cancel your subscription and resubscribe at the holiday price, and have that recurring the rest of the year as well. So that is my understanding. That is what corporate has told me. I'm just feeding the corporate words back to you. All right. No first quarter prop. Mike, you have any first quarter prop bets today?
No, that's matchup stuff. I don't run matchups on Tuesdays, but I'll probably have one tomorrow for sure. There's not a lot going on, but there's some spots I see. I'm trying to find the guys who are heavy first quarter minute guys. Maybe I'll have something on the show later today. So get in on the deal and find out later. Get in on the deal.
As I saw one Discord user note today, actually in our props Discord, he said, if you get the DFS package, you actually get 5 days a week of Mike Gallagher's matchups column, because you get 3 on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then he's on the shows on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And you basically get Gallagher's matchups column whenever he's on the shows as well, just in audible form.
There you go.
So join us for the show behind the paywall today at 5:00 Eastern. We had a lot of success yesterday on the DFS streets. Want to shout out Danny Alms from chat. He took down the fadeaway for $100K first place. Third place was our own Gary Hartman, taking home a cool $10K. Those are sweet payout structures. That's what DFS is these days. Tigo, who contributes the leverage article for our GPP stuff during the week, he finished 6th. All shout out to me. Those guys, I mean, sure, they have the money in their bank accounts, but I have the Yusuf Nurkic flag plant from last night that got them the money in the bank account. So really, who's the real winner here? Sure, their bank accounts may say they are, but I feel like I am. So
clout's worth more than dollars sometimes,
exactly,
man, for sure.
Exactly. I'll take all the clout.
Clout pays for your bills. What are you talking about?
So join us behind the paywall at 5:00 Eastern today with myself and Mike Gallagher. All right. If you are uninterested in giving us your hard-earned dollars, we ask for your lightly earned clicks. Consider subscribing to this YouTube channel to get notifications whenever we go live. Also smashing that like button so you can help circulate this content within the algorithm. As always, feed that algorithm. The algorithm is hungry. It's hungry. Feed that algorithm. Feed yourselves in the DFS and prop streets, and help us feed our families. Nom 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 nom. We'll see you tomorrow.